24/7, you're listening to Footscray Live.
Welcome everyone, broadcasting live from Footscray City College. You're listening to Footscray Live and my name is Isaac Johns. With me on my panel today I have Piper, Taylor, Grania and James. Our special guests today are Jack Dunstan, Pippa Tandy, Emily Untwan and Malcolm Fretz. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So our show today is teaching in the 21st century. I think we'll just start off by asking, where did you guys first start teaching and when did you start teaching? We'll go around.
Okay, I started teaching probably longer ago than anybody else here, but I did start in the university sector and then came to the secondary sector about, many decades ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Malcolm?
I started teaching officially in 2011, and I taught for about 3 years in the UK, teaching senior years. And then when I moved back to Australia, I taught for a little bit, then took a break to work in social media, which was a huge mistake. Then from there, I came upon this job, which was absolutely an amazing opportunity to work with younger kids in media and stuff. And now I work in like the dopest department in Footscray, the arts department with Emily and a bunch of other very talented performing arts teachers.
Yep.
And that's why I'm here at Footscray.
Yeah. On that thought, talking about the drama department, Emily, would you like to butt in for a bit?
Sure. So I started teaching here in 2011, and I'd actually done my rounds here as a student teacher. So I worked with Emma Schmidt and Vicky Tenzaglidis when I was doing my rounds in 2009. Did my final year at a primary school and then managed to get a job here and I haven't left. So it's pretty good. I must like it. I'm still here.
Jack?
Yeah, so I've been here a while as well. I've been here for about 6 years. So I think I started 6 years ago. But before that I had sort of an interesting few jobs. So I taught a bit in far north, Northern Territory in Indigenous community, which was really eye-opening, and then also in the private sector for a little bit, which was also really, really interesting. But I think this school, always dragged me back here because I also did go to high school here. So I've got a long history at the school, and it seemed to just keep dragging me back in. So I've been here a long time. Yeah.
So we've talked about when and where you started teaching. Well, why teach to begin with? There's many professions out there. Let's go around. Start with Emily.
I originally wanted to be an actor and moved from rural Victoria and worked for a year in Melbourne, and the big city was pretty intense and scary. And by the time I sort of went, I probably should go to uni now, I thought it's too late for me to be an actor. So I'll be a teacher instead, and thought that's a good backup. But then I started doing rounds, and my first year I loved it straight away. So it sort of sucked me in straight away, and I never really looked back and gone, all those years I could have been an actor, because now I get to do it from the other side and actually coach the future of actors and designers and stuff.
Well, on the other hand of drama, we've got science and horticulture. Jack, that's your main speciality. Why do you decide to teach in that area?
That's a really interesting one, because initially I probably got into teaching, let's be honest, for the holidays. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest.
That's why I came back to it.
Exactly, and it's a real draw card. But I actually didn't start in that area. I started in the humanities area, and the beauty of teaching, which I really love, is you can end up somewhere that you might not necessarily have thought you'd end up. So I started teaching in humanities, but I always had a passion for horticulture and gardening, and we have amazing facilities here. So I slowly transitioned into that, and now I absolutely love my job. I'm outside most of the day, get to teach kids some hands-on experiences, and not many people can say they love their job, but I absolutely enjoy coming to work every single day. So
yeah. And closely relating to humanities, as you spoke about, we've got English. Pippa, how do you Why did you decide to start teaching English?
That's a tricky question. I'm tempted to say because I couldn't do anything else, but it's also because I think I've got a naturally bossy personality, which suits teaching, and I enjoy it very much. And the thing that I really love about teaching is, and as I say, I've been doing it a long time, is you never stop learning. as a teacher. You're constantly having to learn new things, and so I quite like, even though I hated school as a kid, I like being in a school and with young people teaching now for that learning every day. It's terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, so teaching young people. Malcolm, you spoke about the whole social media thing, which tends to direct towards a lot of young people. Have you taught in that area before, or why did you teach?
Well, I didn't fall into teaching. I had actually started studying law at university, and after a semester of that, I realised it was really boring and not at all like the TV show Ally McBeal I watched growing up.
Yep.
But I was doing these electives at uni that I really liked, which was theatre and film, but they were just like a 1 semester unit, just for some extra credit that you had to do. After chatting to my coordinator, the head of arts, she said, "Why don't you be a teacher?" And I was like, because that sounds really boring too. But then I realized it's actually a lot of fun. Yeah. And from some of you that have been in my classes, we're either in a workshop or we're doing practical stuff on the computers in a lab. And I found out that I don't think I would have done any other job. I did try and learn social media, but sitting down for 9 hours a day in front of a computer is very, very boring.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask, guys, just James here, by the way. Are you still, in contact with any of the students that you've taught previously?
I see heaps of my students, and if anyone
it's like a revolving door for Emily.
Yeah, if anyone in the theatre department knows, as soon as you leave this school, you're free game for me to bring back for free help, because we have people out in the world who are makeup artists or designers or helping with, doing lighting technicians. We've got kids people nearly my age that even other people in our faculty taught, who I'm now dragging back, even though I didn't teach them. I see heaps of them, because I think it's really important to, you do build up so much connectedness with students, especially in things like theatre, to then just go, okay, you're finished now, see you later. We want to use those resources that we spent all this time nurturing and building, and they really love coming back to sort of show their support of the next future as students coming through as well. So I'm always talking to everyone and trying to get them, see what they're doing and see what I can use and see if they can come and help us in some way, and if I can help them in some way as well. So.
Yeah, well, so you spoke about, obviously there were teachers before you, so on, etc. And there's a lot of, and they would have moved off, some to different schools. Why at Footscray in particular? Why did you guys decide to start working at Footscray City College? We'll start off with Pippa.
Because I got a job here, but I have to say, I feel like the luckiest person alive to have got that job here, and I have loved every minute of it. Footscray, I love Footscray. I live way out of town, and it's just been marvellous getting to know Footscray and being in this community, and the kids and the crazy building of the school, and all of that. It is. I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. Really love it. Yeah.
And what about you, Malcolm? Why did you decide to teach at Footscray? You used to work in the UK, did you say?
Yeah, but just before getting a job here at Footscray, I was working in South Yarra for a kind of recruitment company, but as working on their social media stuff. And one day when I was really bored at work and hating my job and not doing what I was meant to be doing, I was looking for jobs online and I came across the Footscray job. I guess like Pippa said, when you're applying for government school jobs, you're lucky to go in and get a job at a school. So you can't really be picky, especially in this time of era at the moment and the job market. You can't really be picky. And we are incredibly lucky to be working for a school like Footscray that is as progressive. And when you've worked at a number of other schools like some of us have, that can be a little bit more regimented, or if they're private, they have certain other criteria that teachers have to fill in, like lots of after-school extracurriculars you have to take part in as well, or weekend sports clubs you have to be part of.
You never do any of that, do you, mate?
I don't know. We're just here on work hours.
Yeah, we do it of our own volition, don't we? Yeah. So we are really lucky to kind of be here.
Yeah. Well, Jack, you've been here for 6 years, so you've clearly enjoyed working at Footscray. Why did you decide to work at Footscray, and why have you decided to stay?
I think, it's a
had
tricky
enough,
one.
Jack?
No. I just walk to work, so it's really easy for me. That's one of the main reasons. But I think you guys don't understand how hard it is to get your first job. So it is quite tricky to get your first job. So I actually, when I finished my teaching rounds, went to Tasmania and built a house with my brother and father. And that was for about 6 months. So I got back and everyone else had a jump on me. And I randomly ran into Adam Taylor, who is the big playmaker at Footscray City College. And he said, yeah, no worries, I'll pass your number on to Doc, who is the other big playmaker, David O'Connor. And he said, I'll give you some CRT work. And I just gradually got into the school that way and got more and more permanent positions. And once I got in, they couldn't get rid of me, so that was fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose being a CRT and being able to create those relationships with the students beforehand really helps as well.
Now that you guys are just on the topic of why you love Footscray so much and why you love teaching, is there any what's the biggest difference between teaching and actually being a student? Because I know Pippa mentioned she hated school growing up, but Emily loves the teaching. Like you talking about how you're connected with the students and stuff. So what was the biggest difference teaching and being a student?
Oh, okay.
I'll go.
You go.
So I found that as being a teacher, I looked back at the teachers that I really got along with at school and just tried to emulate things that I loved about them. So I had teachers that I could go and see for anything, just for a chat, just if I was in any trouble or whatever. In rural Victoria, it can be quite tricky. There's all kinds of issues that pop up, so you've got to be able to talk to someone about that stuff. And so that was one big thing that I came with my teachers. But also, you want, I guess, what's the word to say?
I think we understand.
Yeah.
We'll ask though. Do you guys understand? Do you see yourself teaching for much longer? Like, would you guys see it as a lifetime job, or?
It already has been, yeah.
I think as well from going into other forms of employment and coming back to teaching, you realise, especially like Jack said before with the holidays, how much of a break you do need after giving everything that you have sometimes during a school year and going, you complain about our 6 weeks off, but it's really nothing at the end of the day. We need it to kind of mentally reestablish ourselves.
And we're planning most of that time
We're
anyway.
mostly planning.
We work, even though we're not working, we actually spend a lot of that time getting ready.
I mean, some of the teachers here have very young children and grandchildren that they have to take care of over those summer breaks as well. Yeah.
Have you guys ever considered leaving teaching for another job?
Oh, often, every morning.
I'm always sort of looking at ways to move forward in teaching related jobs, but not necessarily teaching. So I've got a really young kid, so nothing immediate, but I am always looking at jobs within theatres and to do with education in theatres. So still not necessarily out of education or teaching, but as maybe a year or two off. That's something I consider for that.
I did some curriculum writing at one point, and that was quite a nice break from being in the classroom, but still not quite the same buzz, I suppose, as being in a classroom.
Grania here. We're in the 21st century and mental health is just so big and known about now. So I would like to ask, how do mental health issues play a part in your teaching?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. I'm just going to go from my perspective as sort of an outdoor person and a horticulture teacher. And there's a lot of research out there recently about kids' mental health and how it's not great at the moment. And just from my perspective, a really good way to do that is to get kids outdoors and interact with nature. And there's a lot of studies done recently in America around the improvements in mental health and just spending 20 minutes outdoors every day. And there's also more studies done around more output, so you're far more productive if you are exposed to a green space rather than a concrete wall. And that was actually done in Melbourne Uni. So I'm really about getting kids engaged in nature and improving mental health that way. But I know there are other teachers doing it in different ways. And I suppose that's the main thing. We all come to these things from different perspectives, and that's what Footscray really does. We have so many different views and so many different perspectives that all go into this amazing sort of school.
Speaking from a theatre point of view, there's a new curriculum that's been put in place for theatre studies that just started this year, and part of it is safe and ethical work practices, and it's something that they give you a title for, and then you choose within your own group what that says, what that means to your group. And we looked at all kinds of things, including mental health awareness, as well as safety in the workplace and things like that. But we do with the Year 12s particularly, because it's a really stressful year and there's all kinds of stuff going on, not only just being stressed with the amount of work, but everything happens. We're all people. So we had a class on Friday morning, and we always had a check-in. So as part of that, we'd just talk about anything that was bothering us, or if there was something that people didn't want to talk about but just wanted the other people in their group to know that there was something going on, they weren't feeling great, whatever it was. We do that every Friday, and it just made the conversation really open all the time.
Just about being like a teacher, I know that a lot of teachers try and uphold like a persona, but do you ever feel intimidated by students or intimidated by teaching?
Every day. I think, especially working within a government school, there's this sometimes mentality that it can be a little bit more rough around the edges at times. I call it having having different characteristics and diversity as well. I don't think any kids have been outwardly intimidating. I've had more parents, to be honest.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So definitely that's one way of looking at it. But yeah, I wouldn't say directly intimidating by a student. In London, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think Footscray kids think they're pretty tough, but really they're all softies.
I'd like to say something about that, or about the whole business of the 21st century. When I was going to school and then into the later decades of the 20th century, people used to say, if you went back in time, one of the few industrial spaces that would look exactly the same in the 19th century would be a school, because they just didn't change. The same kind of setup, the same kind of control and all the rest of it, restraint and so on. And I have to say, that is still partly true. Even with computers and technology and all the rest of it, you go into a classroom, what do you see is rows of desks. And if you went into a classroom in the 19th century, that's what you would have seen. The kids would have been locked in more tight, and yep, you got to hit them. But, pretty much, and this is related to the thing about mental health, the schools are at risk of becoming kind of sausage machines, even more refined than they ever have been because of technology, and the fact that the Education Department has just been merged with the Department for Employment suggests that this might be, a driving force, and we have to really guard against that as teachers, I think. People go to school to learn how to be free and to make free choices, not to be wage slaves.
And I think that's completely true. But just to add on to what people were saying, how we're surrounded by technology and even just electronics in the 21st century. What are your guys' opinions on the heavy use of technology in schooling nowadays in the 21st century?
I'll just say that I've had a really good term with Year 7s and Year 8s where we have tried not to use much technology. We've been working on paper. People have been doing a lot of drawing and sketching and making and that kind of thing. And the classes have been much more relaxed than usual. I feel like I've got a closer relationship with the kids and their work because of that. And we're all talking about this in our department and about wanting to do a little bit more of that, more work on paper, more stuff with hands and eyes, and use the advantages of the technology, but don't make it absolutely central to everything.
I think that's something that's been happening a lot recently. We use technology a lot, for sure, in our laptops all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be very, very interesting next year because the government is mandating that all schools are banning phones, which will be exceptionally interesting. I don't know how it's going to be carried out, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But just recently been reading that book by David Gillespie about the teen brain, and it's so interesting about the rise in depression and the rise in technology, and it almost mimics each other. So I think a lot of that is tied in, and I think it's a big addiction. You know, even myself, I find that sometimes you get that, you know, a fake buzz in your pocket and you think, oh, I've got to check my phone, and I'm in a classroom. I can only imagine someone who's on the phone, you know, 10 hours a day, how hard it must be sitting there listening to a boring person like myself. You know, it would be really, really tough. So I really feel for younger generations, because I think technology is not taught in the correct way. Like we're not teaching you in a really correct way, and because we don't really know. It's a new thing, and I think time will tell what happens.
Share what you want to, but what's been your most embarrassing story from teaching off the top of your head?
I've got this.
Emily can go first.
Let's hear it.
Really, it's not even to do with teaching that much, just more that I was at school and people saw me. So in the theatre, going down the stairs into the theatre, there's a concrete lip across the top of the door. I thought it'd be really funny to jump from one of the couple of steps down, and I obviously didn't gauge it enough. And I went headfirst into the concrete slab.
I hit that
fell on the
too.
ground and went down. There was a rehearsal going on for a Year 12 band. They were about to do their exam the following week. And I went down and they said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" They all laughed, and then they felt really bad. "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." And then I put my hand up my head, and my head was bleeding. And I went home and I had a concussion for 2 days, and I didn't realise. So that would have been less embarrassing, but a whole group of Year 12s saw me and laughed, and then felt really terrible.
How long ago was this?
4 or 5 years ago. I've still got a dint too from where.
I'm like a walking Charlie Chaplin film. Anyone that's had me in class knows that I have so many embarrassing stories. It's usually involving spilling coffee all the time on me, and I'm always wearing white. Or it was the first time I remember I was teaching a group of girls to do a cartwheel, and I was wearing skinny jeans. And that wasn't a good decision. Yeah, that was me.
Was it at the end of the day?
Okay, mine was, I was using a car from a departmental carpool back in Western Australia when I was working in online and remote teaching, and I had to go out to school to visit a student, saw the student, went very well, came back out and tried to get into a car with the key they'd given me, and it wouldn't open, so I called out the manager, the man that had to come to break into the car, and he broke into the car, and then I realised that wasn't the car. And it was somebody else's car, and I had to apologise. I couldn't even buy him a bottle of wine because he couldn't say anything about it in his report because it would have looked really bad. My principal phoned the other school principal, and apologised on my behalf, and I drove back feeling very sick indeed. It was horrible.
What about you, Jack?
Coffee is similar to Malcolm, but so I don't know if you guys have ever been in one of those situations where you watch your hand do something, and it was right in front of my laptop, and it's just watched it just tip over in front of the whole class and just completely wreck my personal laptop, and that was absolutely shocking. But I still got another year out of it because I went up to the IT department, amazing IT department at Footscray City College, and they padded it down with napkins, and it lasted for another year. So I was really happy about that. But yeah, you just watch your hand, bang. Yeah.
So James here, what do you think, as experienced and semi-experienced teachers, makes a good teacher? We can start with you, Malcolm, if you want.
Okay. Compassion. I think a lot of teachers, and what I've noticed recently, and from a lot of new teachers coming into the profession, is that they want to come in very hardcore, very stern, and that's completely understandable because there used to be this rule when you were at uni, like don't smile until Christmas, and if it's just after Christmas, don't smile till next Christmas. And that sometimes does work, but in our school environment, the first thing I noticed was that does not work. And what the kids here really want to see is compassionate understanding. And if you have their trust, then you have, if you do show that to them, then you have their trust. And that's the most important thing for a new beginning teacher. Yeah.
Do you think that some students bully teachers? Like, I'm not going to say bully because they probably don't bully them, but do you think some teachers do get crap from students?
Not in our department.
I think that some kids and some students have a hard time at school, and sometimes we're, I guess, the safest person they can have a go at. sometimes. So I mean, you can't take things serious. You can't take things personally because it's like being a parent. You know, you're the only person the kid throws tantrums with because you're safe to them. So yeah, you can't take it personally and go, oh, you know, they're bullying us. You just go, there's another reason. There's always another reason. It's not just that they're awful, horrible human beings. Well, not all of them. No.
Yeah, it's like that saying, there's no bad kids, bad behavior. And so it's just kind of the behaviors that they exhibit. And like Emily said, you don't know the reason why they could be behaving that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with Malcolm. I think empathy is just absolutely crucial, but also knowing and loving your subject, I think, is really important. And having a continued interest in your subject, not just something you learned however many years ago and now you're just rehearsing everything over and over again, but a continued interest in your subject and a feeling for your students.
You're listening to the 21st Century Show on Footscray Live, and our special guests are Jack, Pippa, Emily and Malcolm. I just want to ask, Malcolm, you're a coordinator at Footscray City College. Jack earlier mentioned that we're enforcing a new phone policy statewide. How have you dealt with phone and social media issues? Have there been a lot? Has there been severe ones? How has that played a part in your role as a coordinator at Footscray City College?
Currently here at Footscray City College, we already have a policy in place for the mobile phone. So teachers have a warning system, and as of next year, that has to obviously be revamped when the new policy gets rolled out. However, kids are given, after their subsequent warning, they have to actually check in their phone to the front office, and that has been working. However, social media is a constant thing that we're combating against. It's kind of from somebody that used to work in it as well, and that also teaches it in media. For VC Media, we look at social media and online platforms. It has been difficult because we see that there's a whole different world in there, and that a lot of cyberbullying goes on and different kinds of communication that teachers aren't really privy to. So I think it'll be kind of a healthy resurgence next year, really rolling out this new policy in terms of completely banning the mobile phones, even though some of us will have to rework how we use technology in class, because I, for one, actually get kids to use their phones to make films in Year 9 screen and film media. So that will be kind of interesting. Yeah.
Now that you guys were mentioning previously, just before you guys mentioned, about how you really should be passionate about the subject you're teaching, is there room for underperforming teachers in the 21st century?
That's an interesting one.
What was room for?
Is there room for underperforming teachers in the 21st century?
That's hard. It's obviously an industrial issue, but matter. But I guess you have to think about how you define that. And I would certainly never support any kind of, payment on results or any of those kind of things. I think that what you have to have in a school is a system of advocacy for teachers to help people who aren't really achieving as well as they might, and just a kind of a community that supports each other, so that nobody needs to be in a position where they're underperforming. Okay.
This is a question for Pippa. You said that you taught in the 20th century, and I was just wondering, how would you say that that's changed compared to now? How would you say teaching's changed?
Yeah, not hugely, but obviously technology has made a big difference, although there was quite a bit of technology around it towards the end of the last decades of the 20th century. And it was already looking like it could be a problem as well as being an advantage. People were getting, the more flash schools were getting laptops for their kids and stuff like that. So that's been around for quite a while. And I think one of the things is that people were so enthusiastic about that I'm not sure that there's been enough kind of thinking about what the result has been. It's like a juggernaut that we've kind of haven't been able to get out of the way of. And not that different. Perhaps teachers were more punitive in the past, certainly back in the bit of the 20th century when I was at school, punishing for poor results and that sort of thing. But on the whole, people are more interested now in what students can achieve rather than what they haven't achieved and helping them to achieve.
So a lot of you guys would have grown up in the 20th century. So as we're going to be finishing up soon, just a final question. Let's go go around and ask. What's your favourite difference between being a student in, I suppose, an older time of teaching and being a teacher now? What would be your favourite difference and change with how the education system has been over the last couple of decades? We'll start off with Malcolm.
I think one thing I've noticed is that there's more opportunities for students these days. Looking back of how much I kind of go, wow, I wish I had that at school. I also went to a private Catholic school, so some of the subjects we had were very limited. And when I went out into the real world, seeing like how people actually behave, like we didn't even have proper sex education. Like you guys actually have very well all-encompassing health classes and everything like that. And so that's really interesting to know. Your subject selections that you actually have is way more broad out there than what we had, I believe, when I was in high school.
Yes, I agree. Something that I'd forgotten about was just, you made really, a decision was made for you in your third year of high school when you were turning 15 about whether you were going to have a professional career or a trade career. And, that was it. You were cut off once that decision had been made, unless you made a superhuman effort to come back and redo things. So there's that. Certainly so much more flexibility now than there was back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I suppose knowledge is far more accessible these days. So I'm always so amazed when I'm in a class and kids have an understanding of a topic that is so strange or so out there, but they've obviously researched it at home and found out this information. Now, when I was growing up as a kid, if you wanted to find out something, you had to go to the library and get a book out and find that exact piece of information.
Encyclopedias.
Yeah, exactly. It was so hard. But these days, kids, they can watch a YouTube clip on it for 20 seconds and they've already got the key information, and that is so different. And I try and throw it to kids a lot and ask them what their answer is, because sometimes I don't know, and that's okay. And kids are always amaze me with their in the 21st century their knowledge.
I think mine sort of jumps off what Jax was saying. Is the thing that I've noticed most is access. I think because I came from regional Victoria, even if I think about my own subject, we didn't have a lot of access to theatre performances. So I know still in regional Victoria they only, say for example the VCU playlist, there's 12 plays, only 2 of them travel regional. So there's all these access things that have changed, but even that is more than we had when I was at school. So we didn't really have anyone that came. So there's so much access to people now and students now, and like Jack was saying, being able to look something up on YouTube or watch a clip of a play in London, or like even those live broadcasts they do to the cinemas now, and be able to see a show from the West End in a cinema in the Sun Theatre or something like that. That's such a great opportunity and great way to learn.
Just a question for you about that. Do you think that the theatre's getting better over years, or
theatre in general?
Yeah, like do you think the quality of the shows you're producing are getting better and better each year?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a level that's set and people are always reaching and meeting it, and they can only do as well as we expect. So if we aim really high and pitch it really high, then I think you can only set that up for them to be as great as they can be. So yeah, I think so. It's always getting better.
Cool. That brings our show to an end. Thanks for joining us, Jack, Pippa, Emily and Malcolm. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Yeah. That was Jack Dunstan, teacher of horticulture, Pippa Tandy, teacher of English, Emily Untuan, teacher of drama and theatre studies, Malcolm Fretz, teacher of drama and a coordinator at Footscray City College. I'd like to thank my panel today, which was consisting of Piper, Taylor, Grania and James. My name is Isaac Johns. This has been the 21st Century Show, and you're listening to Footscray Live.
You're listening to Footscray Live.